In October of 1872, the town of Harrow, Bluff still believed in hierarchy. It believed in names. It believed in men who owned land and men who worked it. It believed that order, once established, remained permanent. And it believed the church bell never rang without reason. Harrow Bluff was small even by Louisiana standards, little more than a bend in the river surrounded by cypress swamp and long fields of sugarcane. Moss hung from trees like funeral veils. The earth stayed damp even in summer. The air smelled of river silt and molasses. At the highest point of land, just beyond the floodplain, stood Calvary Road Baptist Church. White clapboard siding, narrow steeple, a bell imported from Charleston before the war. The bell had rules. It rang once at dawn, once at noon, once at dusk. It rang for weddings. It rang for funerals. It rang in emergencies, fires, floods, illness. But it never rang at midnight, until it did. The first sound woke old Mrs. Renfield. She was 73 and nearly deaf in one ear, but the vibration traveled through wood and bone alike. It was not loud at first. It was deep, measured, deliberate. 1. The echo stretched unnaturally long over the swamp. 2. 3. By the sixth toll, dogs across the parish were barking. Lanterns flickered in bedroom windows. Men stirred in their beds, confused and irritated. At 12, the bell stopped. Not abruptly, but as if someone had let the rope slip from their hands. Silence returned to Harrow Bluff. No fire broke out. No rider came galloping down the dirt road. No cry followed. Only swamp insects resumed their chorus, and by morning, the Harrow family was gone.
Edmund Harrow was not liked, but he was respected. In 1872 Louisiana, that was more important. He owned Harrow Bluff Plantation, 600 acres of cane and cotton. He had inherited it from his father, who had inherited it from his. The war had diminished their wealth, but not destroyed it. Edmund had adapted quickly. He shifted labor contracts. He invested in river shipping. He survived Reconstruction by keeping his voice low and his accounts balanced. He had a wife, Clara, 2 sons, 1 daughter. His brother Thomas and Thomas's wife lived in the main house as well. 7 in total dined together each night beneath a chandelier imported from New Orleans. They were not kind people, but they were careful people, and careful people do not simply vanish. The last confirmed sighting came from Elijah Mercer, a farmhand who claimed he saw candlelight in the dining room windows shortly before midnight. 7 plates, he later testified, like always. Inside the house the next morning, deputies found food still on porcelain, wine half poured, a chair overturned at the head of the table, the front door standing open. There was no sign of struggle, no blood, no broken glass. The beds upstairs had not been slept in. It was as if the entire family had stood up mid-meal and walked out into the dark together. Sheriff Hollis arrived by mid-morning. He was a practical man with no taste for theatrics. He walked the perimeter, inspected the cellar, questioned servants, examined boot prints in the damp earth. 7 sets of tracks led south, toward the bayou. The tracks did not scatter. They did not run. They walked, side by side in places, single file in others. After 50 yards, the ground grew soft. Water pooled. The prints dissolved into mud, and there the trail ended. Boats were checked, none missing. No bodies floated to the surface. The swamp, thick and patient, offered nothing back.
The church was locked that night. Reverend Caldwell swore it. Yet when townsfolk entered the following morning, The bell rope hung slightly frayed, not cut, not snapped, worn, as if someone had pulled it harder than intended. But there were no footprints inside, no mud tracked onto the pine floors, no sign of forced entry, and the bell could not ring itself. Or so they believed. Rumors spread quickly. Debt, political enemies, freedmen uprising, hidden gold. But beneath every theory was a quieter truth the town did not say aloud. The Harrows were feared. Edmund's contracts were ruthless. Thomas enforced discipline in ways that left bruises hidden under sleeves. Clara kept detailed ledgers of debts owed, always collecting, never forgiving. Harrow Bluff Plantation had been built on authority, and authority, once weakened, becomes dangerous. 4 former laborers had left the plantation weeks earlier after disputes over wages. One of them, a man named Isaiah Booker, was questioned repeatedly. He denied involvement, calmly, but he said something that unsettled the sheriff. "They walked," Isaiah said. "Nobody made them." "What do you mean?" "They walked because they knew." Knew what? Isaiah did not answer. In Clara Harrow's writing desk, investigators found meticulous financial records. Hidden among them was a sealed envelope containing property transfers not yet filed. All land holdings were being consolidated under Thomas Harrow's name, dated the week before the disappearance. Why transfer everything if you planned to remain? Why gather the family at supper the same night the bell rang? Sheriff Hollis considered a darker possibility. What if the disappearance was not an attack? What if it was an agreement? 3 days later, a bargeman upriver claimed he saw lantern light moving along the marsh near midnight. 7 figures, one carrying something heavy. But from a distance it could have been driftwood, or illusion, or guilt playing tricks. Harrow Bluff relied on Harrow money. The general store stocked goods on their credit. The church roof had been repaired with their donation. The sheriff's office had been expanded on their land grant. To uncover scandal would destabilize everything. And so the investigation slowed. Officially, it remained open. Unofficially, it grew quiet. A month later, the bell rang again. Once. At midnight. Only once. Men rushed to the church this time. The doors were still locked, the rope untouched, but the bell swayed slightly, as if moved by a fading hand. That was when fear replaced curiosity. Not ghost fear, but reckoning. It happened 6 months later, during low water season. A fisherman noticed something unnatural beneath the surface of a shallow inlet. Not bodies, barrels. 7 sugar transport barrels weighted with stone. Inside them were ledgers, documents, personal correspondence, deeds, family portraits, everything that proved the Harrows existed, destroyed. Except one thing missing, the bodies. If murder had occurred, it had been thorough. If disappearance had been staged, it had been deliberate. But why destroy your own legacy? A lawyer in Baton Rouge later revealed something else. Edmund Harrow had amended his will 2 weeks before vanishing. In the event of unforeseen catastrophe, ownership of the plantation would transfer to a newly formed cooperative trust composed of senior labor supervisors, formerly enslaved men. Legal, signed, witnessed, never publicly announced. If Edmund died without heirs present, the land changed hands immediately. Did the Harrows learn too late what Edmund had signed? Did Thomas object? Was there a confrontation at supper? Did 7 people walk into the bayou knowing their dynasty had ended? Or was the will forged? Was the midnight bell a signal? Was justice arranged quietly by those who understood law better than violence? No one ever proved anything, but Harrow Bluff Plantation did not remain Harrow Bluff Plantation. Within a year, it operated under new management, and it prospered. No one searched the swamp after that. No one rang the bell at midnight again. Reverend Caldwell left town 2 years later. Sheriff Hollis retired early. The Harrow house was eventually dismantled board by board. Children grew up hearing the story not as tragedy, but as caution. Power built without mercy does not collapse loudly. It dissolves quietly, like footprints in mud. The strangest part was not the disappearance. It was the walk. 7 sets of footprints, side by side, into darkness. No resistance, no scattering, just decision. And somewhere in the memory of Harrow Bluff, long after the sugarcane was cut and the river shifted its course, there remained one unanswered question. Who pulled the rope? Because someone did, and bells do not toll 12 times by accident.